This is the book of Acts, chapter 14 and verse 22, confirming the souls of the disciples and exhorting them to continue in the faith, and that we must, through much tribulation, enter into the kingdom of the Most High. First and foremost, I want to give all glory, honor, and praise to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Rachakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of the great millstone that rule well and teach well. Peace, love, and salutation to the hopeful elect out there. I'm your brother Taziah One from the Great Millstone Church here in Birmingham, Alabama. And call out Ba'ashem, Yahushai. Spirit jumped on me just to do a quick little exhortation. I was at the plantation, and the Spirit jumped on me just to cut the camera on, and exhort brothers, man, to keep fighting, man. I think I want to entitle this video, keep fighting, man. Where, we finna go into some very serious times, man. So now is the time, to get your mind right, man, and to prepare spiritually, for the times that we finna go into, man. Because, it's finna get tough, man. And you know what they say, when the going gets tough, the tough get going, man. So now is the time to dig down, and let it all hang out, man. We almost home, man. We seeing all the prophecies coming to pass. We seeing the wars and the rumors of wars. We seeing the beginning stage of the famine. We seeing the earthquakes in diverse places. All the things that Yahushua told us to look out for before his return, man. So we at the door, man. So now is not the time to be getting weak in the spirit. Now is the time to really be turning up, man. Going hard for Yahushua. But we know, the scripture says, for the Lord is not unrighteous to forget our works and labors of love, man. So now's the time to be really, going all in, for Yahushua. And at the same time, it's going to get difficult. You might lose loved ones. Your faith may be tested, just like Job. Job pretty much lost it all, man. Job lost his kids. Job was afflicted. People talking about him behind his back, had friends talking about him and shit, Hey, man, we got to even consider Yahushua, man, what he had to go through, man. And the servant is no greater than his master. So we gonna catch it, man. We're going to be persecuted, for this truth. We're going to be talked about. We're going to go through it, man. Again, confirming the souls of the disciples and exhorting them to continue in the faith, and that we must, through much tribulation, enter into the kingdom of the Most High. So the Lord didn't say, it's going to be a cakewalk. That's why we got to fight, man. We got to pray, man. The scripture tells us to pray without ceasing, man. We got to constantly pray, And the scripture says, hey, the prayers of the prayers of a righteous man pierce the clouds. So the Lord hear us, man. And he ain't gonna put more on us than we can bear, man. We just gotta trust in Yahushua, man. The Lord got us, man. The Lord is not a man that he should lie, man. So we just gotta trust in the Lord. The scripture says, trust in the Lord with all thy heart, and lean not to thine own understanding. So we may go through little shit. It could just be the Lord testing us. To everything there's a season. You might have a season where it's a little rough. But then, it could be a season where everything looking all good. But we just gotta keep fighting, man. We just got to keep pushing, man. Keep striving, man, to please Yahushua. Again, man, this ain't no time to get fucking weak. When you get low in the spirit, man, you just got to pray, man. Just got to pray, man. Just constantly pray, man. You know, again, pray without ceasing, man. You know, well, the Lord got us, man. You know, just got to trust in him, man. You know, what he said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. You know, so the Lord got us, man. You know, but it's going to, hey, man, it's going to get tough sometimes. You know, but we just got to trust in the Lord. And the scripture, the scripture speak of, the scriptures were written aforetime for our learning. You know, and we can learn from Job, man. Yeah, true indeed, Job caught hell, but look at his end, man. Look at his end, man. You know, well, the Lord blessed Job at his end, man. You know, so we just gotta, hey, man, just continue to fight, keep pushing, trusting in the Lord, man. You know, and the Spirit was on me. You know, I was meditating on what to go into, and the Lord just gave me this. You know, Kala Yabashimi Awashai, just exhortation. You know, for you believers out there, man, we almost home, man. Again, we see the prophecies. We at the door. You know, you see they talking about the micro C hip, you know, the Neuralink. You know, again, all the prophecies coming to pass. The wars in the room of war. We seeing the love of men and waxing cold. You know, to where, hey, man, you know, now shit pretty much gravy, man. You know, considering that, you know, we finna go into the worst times ever in human history, man. You know, so again, now is not the time to begin. We ain't seen shit yet. You know, so now's the time to really be sending up them prayers, man, really praying, you know, sowing to the Spirit, you know, be good. I'm speaking for myself first and foremost, you know, get a fast in, really sow to the Spirit, you know, really be locked into the Spirit, man, because we see ain't shit out here, man. You know, ain't shit to be concerned with in this world. You know, this shit finna go, man. This shit finna go. So now is the time to be really getting right in the Spirit, man. Getting your mind right. You know, the scriptures tells us to let go from these mortal thoughts. Fuck this place, man. Fuck this place, man. This place is finna go. Okay? You know, but before the Lord's return, man, hey, we got to go through the time of Jacob's trouble, a time like never seen. You know, so that's why we should be really getting right, man, you know, in the Spirit. You know, because things gonna get tough, man. You know, we can lose our house, our job. You know, we're gonna take some L's, man. But through Hamashiach Yahushua, man, we already got the victory, Jack. We already got the victory, man. So just hold on to your crown, man. You know, hold on for your crown. What Jay say? Stay down for your crown. You know, stay down for your crown, man. Let no man take that crown, man. Hold on for dear life, man. You know, we at the door, man. We at the door. We at the door, baby. Just gotta hold on, man. You know. So when, hey, man, again, man, when the going get tough, the tough get going, man. Pull your pants up, man, and goddamn, you know, fight, man. You know, gotta keep turning, goddamn. You know. But yeah, man, just want to do a quick little hit, man. You know, Lord willing, you were edified. I'm going to give all glory, honor, and infinite praise to Yahweh by Hashem Yahushai, by Hashem Rachakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of the great millstone that rule well and teach well. Peace, love, and salutations to the hopeful elect out there, man. To the next time, shalom, man. Shalom, shalom.